It seems like this release is kind of a send off with a chef's kiss for ServiceNow. They've provided a lot of quality of life features. They provided agentic AI features. And some of the things that folks have just been waiting a long time for seem to be in this release.
Welcome back to the garage. Today we're going to talk about the Zurich release of ServiceNow. It's a major update that advances AI-driven automation, developer productivity, user experience, and platform security. But it also introduces multi-agentic AI, new low-code efforts, natural language tools, upgraded analytics. That's really what the focus is. And I'm going to let Steele start this off here. We'll probably have a multi-session of this unboxing of Zurich. So let's start off with your favorite, Steele. What are your favorites in this release?
I think my favorite is that this is the Z release, and I am starting to feel old. So I think some of the key things that I would highlight in this release, and then one of the things I'm most excited for is the kind of new way ServiceNow is handling non-human accounts or service accounts as we know them. They're calling it machine identity, and they have a user interface around it. And if you're on Yokohama, I think you'll probably see this on the user profile. Absolutely, you'll see it in Zurich. There is an identity field that's on the user profile. So you can mark if it's a machine account, if it's a human account, etc., or if it's AI. I think AI was one of the options that was in there as well, which is really interesting when you start thinking about agentic and how you might mark an agent with the user profile as AI. So I think the first thing
You
that I'll
want
talk about
these?
is that there's some AI stuff, of course, that is really cool. And then this is a proper release for MCP as well. We get the MCP client, we get MCP server. So for all the fans who are excited for MCP, we'll talk about that as well. I think the first thing here would be the machine identity council, excuse me, which is a whole interface that helps you kind of govern and look at these accounts. So it's not just a new interface for hitting new, creating these accounts, but there's also uh, kind of a workspace or dashboard, if you will, that helps you manage and track these accounts.
Do you feel this is that just a pre of billing licensing differently? Machine accounts, you get so many machine accounts, you get so many AI accounts versus a user account. Do you think they're going to try to separate these a little bit?
So I don't think so. Kind of as a practitioner on ServiceNow for over a decade, service accounts have never been managed in a way that was super clean. Historically, there are some properties on the user profile that you would mark, web access only being one of those. There was another field for kind of marking if it was an integration account so that you wouldn't get charged for licensing. This matures that, and it starts making you think about the governance and what access these accounts have and how many are there and when was the last time they were used.
Yes.
I think having a really old service account that hasn't been used but is still active is risky. And then I think the other really cool thing is that there is a place where it actually shows you API calls that these service accounts are making. And this has really been a gap for a long time on the platform. It just hasn't gotten that love until the very end here at the Z release. And so there is a dashboard, and hopefully we'll be able to show this on the screen here, that shows some metrics around the API account usage, the authentication method that's used. So do you have a bunch of basic service accounts that aren't using OAuth tokens, but they're just using username and password? How old are those? What service accounts are they running? And then do they actually have unrestricted access to the UI, or do they have web service access only? And then how many days since it was last used? Is it still active? When was it created? All that information is there in a dashboard for you, which makes managing these accounts way easier.
Hmm.
I think if you've had to manage these at scale in the past, you've had to either create a custom app, you had a custom table, you had to create custom fields, and now ServiceNow is providing you a method for managing these accounts, thinking about the governance of these accounts, and really starting to put a process around how these non-human accounts are managed. And so I'm super excited for this feature in Zurich. Cannot wait to use it. Um, I think if one were to find out more, I would check the documentation. There's a video in there, and hopefully we'll be able to roll some of the clips for that.
You know,
Yeah. So I think the next really exciting thing is something that doesn't have the most catchy or coolest of names, but it's called the AI Connector Utility. And the purpose of this is to really help augment your virtual agent strategy. If you're using virtual agents in ServiceNow, or if you're exposing it in Slack, Copilot, Microsoft Teams, or an enterprise chat tool, this utility helps you link those Gen AI custom skills that you might be creating with Analysis Skill Kit, etc., with your virtual agents so that your virtual agent one, it is already LLM powered. You're already able to generate those topics, but now you can also link those skills in there. So I think it's a nice quality of life feature for virtual agent that is going to help you get up to speed and be able to do things quicker in the Gen AI space with your agent. So you feel like it is more than just a chat bot. It really is an assistant to your associates on the front end. I think the other related thing there is MCP. If there was a drum roll or some sound effect I could use right here, I would use it here.
yeah.
So you have proper MCP client and server capabilities inside of ServiceNow. So if you're using AI Agent Studio and you go up to the tools, you'll see MCP server, and in the store you'll find MCP client. And I think a lot of these capabilities, the machine identity console, which I just mentioned included, you can find in the store, you can download those plugins, you can keep them up to date, all following that store strategy so that you're not dependent on that 6 month or biannually upgrade cycle.
We talked about this a little bit off the show a little bit, but I want to hear you again because I think a lot of people here would probably be interested in hearing this. Give me your bit about who should be creating this server, the MCP.
Mm.
Where do you feel the buy-in or the legwork and these offerings should come from?
So that's an excellent question. And I think the honest answer to it is most companies are still figuring that out. I think everybody is trying to just figure out, what do these tools do? How do I interact with them? And then what makes the most sense in terms of how we interact. It would be nice if ServiceNow pushed out a MCP server with all the capabilities. I think right now that just doesn't exist. What I've seen is that folks are building their own MCP servers and adding their own capabilities to those servers. And to make this, to give a real example here, a more tangential example, I think of MCP servers as an abstraction of APIs. In the glory days, which are not too long ago, you've got different teams who would need to integrate with a system or a tool. They have to go build their own implementations for that. With MCP, it abstracts that away. So if you have an MCP server that knows how to interact with the APIs, well, now those teams that would have had to build their own integrations, they just need to connect to that MCP server and they've got all the same capability. So you're solving for the API problem for all your tooling, all your implementations, all your teams that need to integrate. They just connect to MCP with their LLMs, have access to all those tools. So lots of value there. Where I think the water gets murky is if you have various different teams all trying to recreate or replicate those same MCP servers with those same capabilities or different capabilities. I think there's got to be some centralized strategy when it comes to an MCP server. Who creates the capabilities for it? Who's got access to do that? And I think a question that I would have is, should the vendor do that? Should the customer do that? I think it's something that the space is still figuring out.
Yeah, I think at least the line that ServiceNow provides is MCP is intended as a universal protocol and open interface for any tool, not a proprietary extension. They want to allow the flexibility, the rapid innovation by diverse contributors rather than platform owners. So I think that's their answer of why they don't present one. They have a few other things too, but I think they're trying to stay out of the governorship of it, I think, and let it be a community platform that they're just a player in.
And I think I've seen that before in a different time and place where they were maybe a little bit more lax on that customization.
Mhm.
And at some point, they had to kind of shift gears on that because it was really hard to deliver value to your customers when they were so customized that they couldn't make use of the new features. And so when new features come out, your customers are going to have to, if that's the approach, have to add all those capabilities to that MCP server every time. Whereas ServiceNow already knows what the APIs are and could just add it themselves, and then we could just make use of it. So it's
I think
my
I think they don't have a way to monetize it. They don't have a way to control it yet. Like you said, they're still figuring some things out along with us. So maybe they don't want to jump out with one and then have to support one or even say, nope, it's going away because it was useless. You know what I mean? Wait, pausing and giving an opportunity for something to generate before they maybe have to fill a
yeah,
hole. I don't know.
and I think that's a pretty astute observation. It's kind of the Apple approach is put something out there or look at something that's already out there, see where the product market fit is, see where it works, see where it doesn't, and then kind of drive action there. So we'll see how that goes. It's absolutely an exciting capability. It creates possibilities that were not possible and also eases the difficulty of having to create your own implementations for each of these APIs. So fingers crossed that we'll see more investment in that space because I think MCP is going to be wildly useful for companies at large and at scale. We'll just see what the market kind of votes with. In terms of dollars.
What do you think about developer sandboxes? I might be picking low hanging fruit now, not the exciting stuff, but I've gotten into areas where we want to test something out, but I don't want to really bog down my dev. And I'm
Mm.
not this is where I play that or not. But it says like it enables your administrators and delegated developers to request access and manage an isolated development on top of your development instance.
Yeah, I can see a whole bunch of scenarios where that's useful, especially if you've got that synced to something like Git or a CD pipeline, so you're keeping that up to date, which is not, I would say, typical of most folks when using ServiceNow. Usually you're using source control inside of ServiceNow, but if you can quickly get those environments spun up, get it back to the state that you need it in, and you don't have to worry about your PDI getting blown away, so to
Right.
speak. That's super useful. I mean,
They've even
I
got
would
a
already have
sandbox
usage for
management
that.
dashboard. They even got
And there's no
the
nice.
dashboard that manages all your sandboxes. So they perceive that you I think that you're attacking what you said. You know,
Mhm.
personal instances were okay to do, but you lose they were just troublesome. And I think this is the answer to that, to let development extend, but not get off my lane in a sense. I'm gonna have a little area that they can go play off the side of the road, but they're not gonna mess with the main road, even this dev, right? I don't want to mess with that. So
Yeah, well, I expect that will be really popular with
I think so
developers.
too. What else do you like?
I think, something else that probably won't be in a lot of highlights, but is more quality of life is, and I wonder if the part of this is because of agentic. There are new kind of glide form API methods that ServiceNow has rolled out. So being able to clear forms, interact with forms, just new methods in general, which is something that I wasn't expecting. So it seems like this release is kind of a send off with a chef's kiss for ServiceNow. They've provided a lot of quality of life features. They provided agentic AI features, and some of the things that folks have just been waiting a long time for seem to be in this release.
So do you
So
feel like
it's,
this release not only gave you agentic and AI and forward thinking and opening up so many doors and windows, but it also felt fills the gaps on the, like you said, the experience of using ServiceNow. They've jumped ahead there. They've got asset audit management. They've got an MFA dashboard for authentication. They forced that now with Yokohama on, but now they got a dashboard. I mean, it
yeah,
seems like they're hitting those little, they listen to the users, to the community, and they're starting to hit a few of those things, as well as what they typically do, which is go way out, extending on a new road, the future. So,
yeah. It's there. There should be some kind of highlight video that goes from A to Z, kind of showing just how much the platform has evolved.
yeah.
And for those folks that don't know, before the named releases, it was like winter 2010, summer, and then they got into the named releases. I was hoping that we would go with bands for the next set of names. I was really hoping A would be Alice Cooper, but didn't happen. Maybe next the next
The
cycle.
next round,
Yeah, the next round after this. I think the A release is Australia. I could be wrong on
Australia,
that.
then Brazil.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm very curious what they'll end up doing for some of the names here. But it'll be a lot of travel for
How
folks,
about
that's for
zero
sure.
copy?
Zero copy is very interesting. Being able to use and reference data that's not in ServiceNow almost kind of breaks my mind a little bit, because in order to make to get value and use out of data, you've had to land it somewhere. Whether that was on an import set table or something temporary, you still had to have a place to land it. And these zero copy connectors are going to make it easier for agentic to be able to go out, make use of the information without having to copy the data unnecessarily in your ServiceNow instance. So I know that is a relatively newer capability. I know it's still being built out. You're going to have, similar to Integration Hub where you've got spokes,
Mhm.
you're going to have connectors for zero copy. And so those will be standardized ways to integrate and will lower the burden of what you have to build to be able to get value out of it. So very much looking forward to that. Also makes life simpler too. And you can kind of stick to that principle of not repeating yourself in terms of copying data everywhere to get usage out of it.
Well, it's for some of this, in some areas, I won't have to worry about securing that data that I've grabbed from the finance system or from, a DMS system. If I'm referencing in order to get myself from A to C and using this as
Uh-huh.
a B lookup, but not having to create a table to sync it to actually do the B lookup, it kind of saves me in having to now govern that extra table of data that might have PII, PHI, or something else out there
Hmm.
that's risky. I always worry about it. If I keep bringing us every interview we do, charging. I guess I'm used to Microsoft and Citrix and all these other vendors looking for that next opportunity to bring revenue. So I worry about tokens or whatever it is and how they're going to take advantage of this, because I want to jump on this big time when I'm accessing finance or accessing their DMS systems, because I don't want to carry that in. And I'm worried about building this, and next thing you know, I'm getting charged, a lot of money for it. So,
You'll have to talk to your account rep. It depends. It all depends. Um, I think the kind of what I've observed so far is it's a value equation. They want it to be valuable for you. They want you to get value out of it, and they're willing to partner with you. Uh, Again, not sponsored by ServiceNow here, but they'll partner with you to try and figure out how that makes sense. Is the value there? It's always a value equation. If this is the cost, am I getting the value out of it? The answer is either yes or no. And so I think that's where you need partnership. Along the same vein, of that is probably the newest capability that was just released that I've had a chance to look at it. I haven't had a chance to use it yet. Um, but that's Build Agent. So in the ServiceNow IDE, which also that is relatively new as well, on the right side, you have something akin to Cursor almost, where you have this freeform type. You can say you can generate an application, it can help you write code built into ServiceNow's interface. And I think when you're going through, you can go through and test it out. You get 25 free for the instance, and then it's a per cost after that. I don't know how the licensing works for that. So that'd be something to figure out. But they do give you some for free, so you can try the capability out. And I think it'll let you do that in the PDI as well. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But this is kind of aimed at helping I, I'm thinking pro coders kind of get things built quicker. And then it might also lower the barrier to entry for some of those analysts or those workflow kind of focused BAs. But I am thinking probably the first audience to really validate this will be your pro coders.
What about AI Control Tower?
Awesome. Love it. We'll be curious to see where the licensing goes on that. Similar to APM, Application Portfolio Management, or CMDB, your configuration management database, AI Control Tower helps you be able to rationalize, view, see ROI, the security risk um, stature, or your security posture on your AI assets that are in your CMDB, kind of all in one place. It's a massive workspace but with a bunch of different tabs for each one of those that I just mentioned that helps you track your AI systems down to the prompt level or your agentic agents, what models they're using, what data sets they're using, how how much have they been used, how much have they been run. There is the Zurich release as part of AI Control Tower, they have just made it possible to automatically discover either an Amazon Bedrock or Azure Foundry, I believe it is, the agentic agents are running there. So with AI Control Tower, you could discover your agentic agents, pull it into ServiceNow, track the utilization, track the ROI, track how long they've run, what models they're using, are they compliant? You're able to answer 5 or 6 different elements that everyone at the C-suite is going to be curious about. I think the interesting thing will just be right sizing the licensing so that it makes sense and being able to really show the ROI. There is a value portion of that workspace which shows you ROI, and I think that will get upgraded over time as the industry kind of understands better what metrics are really key to understanding the value of AI and what it's driving for the business. So I think it's really exciting. I think there's going to be a lot more to see when it comes to AI Control Tower, and it's really helping to answer the question of, do you know what you own from an AI asset perspective?
So December 4th and something like that, Impact is now an app now instead of just a portal,
Yeah.
ServiceNow Impact. And they have merged or bought out a company called Bravium, a
Hmm.
product, and brought it in. And just to read off a little bit of what their selling points are, because I'm kind of in love with this if it is what I think it is. There's automated code inspection. There's technical debt reduction as far as it calculates and prioritizes your technical debt. Real-time error monitoring, which I love, as far as bad code and things like that.
Hmm.
Comprehensive dashboards, training and governance. I love all those highlights, those bullet points. I wonder if it's an open shell I have to build everything for, or is it going to provide me something as soon as I install it, as soon as I turn it on, enough to where I can say, hey, I gained something right off the bat. Now let me fine tune it. Which do you think that is? And do you see this as a valuable tool? I see it from my perspective, leading a team of developers with ServiceNow and trying to establish consistencies and finding errors faster. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a massive boon in terms of creating standardization around health and sustainability on the platform. The Impact team is now partnering with, is a partner, was in the portal. Now that application is being brought inside your own instance, and you're able to monitor health findings inside your platform. You can create stories off of those. What do I call this in English? The code monitoring, essentially,
Mhm.
for best practices or best practice engine around coding is also in there. Just those couple things alone, being able to see where do we have tech debt, where's our trouble or sore spots from a maintainability and upgradability, performance, etc. Having that vantage point inside the instance will allow you to prioritize and take action. Having the best practice engine will help prevent some of those things from occurring. And now you can really start getting crisp and focused on how do we think about platform health? How do we address platform health? And what things should we be targeting this quarter to keep us in a healthy state or get us back to a healthy state?
Mhm.
And I think too much that is always an afterthought. And after such a period of time with that being an afterthought and the tech debt builds up, eventually you're not going to be able to get the value out of the platform because you're trying to play catch up with tech debt. And
Always.
then,
Yes.
yeah, you will have to rip the band-aid off at some point in time, and that's a very expensive band-aid.
So, do you see it as a good way of managing offshore or outsourced development?
So it's great from a technology perspective, but you've got people and process. If your people don't work the process, the technology does nothing.
Mhm.
So I think now that the capability is there and it's more mature, look at process, look at the roles for the folks who need to manage that process and bake it into every sprint, every cadence. There
Right.
should be some percentage, 5%, 10%, whichever, in every release cycle that is addressing that tech debt. That is, it's like stretching after you work out. It's trying to think of some kind of good maintenance examples. It's like changing the oil in your car.
Mhm.
It is going to give you a platform that's performant for longer, that's easier to manage. It's like keeping your room clean. Never let it get more than 10 minutes from clean. And it's really simple to clean your room. You let that go on for months or years, and it's really difficult and it's really easy to kind of push it off longer because, oh, this is going to take a lot of investment. And that's kind of the opportunity cost of not doing that 5 or 10% every sprint.
Right.
The cost grows exponential.
We just went from a 3-week sprint to a 4-week sprint.
Hmm.
So, we did extend what we thought was development time to 3 weeks. Now it's a focused 3 weeks of development, but on the front and back ends is more planning, more discussions, more getting the designs right, getting the stakeholder, you know, it's I know we're supposed to spin that way before it comes to sprint, but even when it hits the sprint, things are starting to happen. We have such a small team. So we put time on the beginning and the end for that qualitative piece of it to allow
Hmm.
us more development time because we still got a lot of work to push. And we felt always we needed 3 more days. Like we were supposed to deliver on Friday, we didn't deliver till Wednesday. You know, we felt those pieces. And I thought, maybe instead of always having the irregular be regular, you know, let's plan for this. Let's have more front end and then do that. So I think that's something we should consider as far apart as this too is this is a way of doing that, right? This is a way of managing that from a Scrum Master's view in a sense.
So I think this would be content addressing the technical debt would be content in a scrum in your release cycle. There is this concept, I think it comes from SAFe, called PI planning or a planning increment,
Hmm.
where you'll have various different teams, either just inside the team or working across teams to come up with the items that they need to work for that quarter based off of the strategic priorities for the enterprise. And that work might be planned in which one team has a dependency on another team. Kind of can't always control that, or committed, in which case either both teams said, yes, we're doing this, or one team says, yes, we're doing this, and is fully in their control to do. There is an application in ServiceNow called Enterprise Agile Planning, which is meant to give you a workspace and a way to manage that process around PI planning. And so you can see your teams, you can manage their backlogs, you can see the dependencies between the work. And if you've got something that is planned early but has a dependency on something later, you can see that conflict. And so, super useful tool. Great for strategic planning if you're managing your work inside of ServiceNow. Super useful.
Okay, perfect. What else you got? Anything else you want to highlight here on this session?
Absolutely, but I would have to have you renew your subscription. I am just teasing. I think those are the big ones. Zurich is a huge release. I think the only other thing that I would mention that kind of caught my attention is that there are new ACL types. So ACLs, or access control lists, are how you govern access in ServiceNow and tie it to roles. Well, there is a new type of ACL that allows you to apply the ACL. It's always been the row level. Now it's the column level. So for example, if you had a confidentiality field on a form, on multiple forms, and across the entire system, you need that confidentiality field having the same type of access control protection. There's an ACL that lets you do that now. So
Mm,
it allows you to attack ACLs from a column level perspective instead of the row level perspective. Instead of just at the table level, you can now get the entire system, which is very interesting.
yeah. Yes.
That definitely caught my eye. But there's so much in the Zurich release. I think the best thing that you can do is just look at the release notes with everything else. Do your testing in subprod environment. I typically recommend waiting until patch 2 before you go into a production environment. ServiceNow does make the early releases of or their general release available early so that you can do some testing ahead of time. But you've got to plan for that in your PI planning to make sure that you're giving yourself time to work in those sprints and that you're not accruing or creating any technical debt.
Thanks again, Steele. Glad to have you on this. And I'm sure we'll grab something else and talk here in the garage next week.
Awesome. Hopefully it's a beer.
Yes, exactly right. Take care.
Take it easy.